Okay. Oh, and I think I need a mic. Oh, here it is. Thank you.
Good morning, Atira. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to KPC, everyone here in the room and also online. This morning, Atira will be giving a teaching, the third in a series.
Yeah.
On Tonglen, and they have been excellent. And so that will be followed by a short Chenrezig practice and a possibility of Q&A if there's time.
Well, there probably won't be, but yeah. See if at some point in the series we can make time for that.
Okay, so we'll get started with some opening prayers. And thank you.
So we'll do three of the first prayer in this template.
Organ yogi num jansam, pemage sardom pola, yatsen jogi ngodrubne, pemajong ne jesura, Pordukam dro mangpogor, ketki jesu dab drupki, Jinjilo cheer sheksu so, Guru Pema Siddhi Om. Organ Yogi Num Jansam, Pemage Sardom Pola, Yatsen Jogi Nodrupne, Pema Jone Jesudra, Pordukam Drom Ampokor, Ketki Jesu Dabdruki, Jinjilo Cheer Sheksu So, Guru Pema Siddhi Om. Organ Yogi Num Jansam, Pemage Sardom Pola, Yatsen Jogi Nodrupne, Pema Jone Jesura, Pordukam Dro Mangpogor, Ketki Jesu Dabdruki, Jinjilo Cheer Sheksu So, Guru Pema Siddhi Om.
All right. So during this 6-week series, we're focusing on the practice of Tonglen, which is also known as the practice of sending and receiving, or the practice of exchanging self and others. And this practice opens our heart to the suffering of others. It deepens our compassion and our loving kindness. It helps us to develop bodhicitta, the awakened mind committed to benefiting all beings. Each week in the series, we're going to try a different Tonglen visualization. And so most of the Tonglen meditation will be the same week to week. And then there'll be a little variation at the end. Some parts will be different. But before we meditate, I'm supposed to talk for a little while. In the Saturday meditation class, we mostly meditate. And in the Sunday meditation class, we not only learn the various meditation techniques, but we also learn about the philosophy and principles underlying the Buddhist meditation practices. So in the first class in this series, I talked about why the practice of Tonglen is so helpful for this moment. In the practice of Tonglen, we are taking on the sufferings of others and sending them our happiness. So in order to understand why beings are suffering and what is the nature of the suffering that we are trying to free them from. Then in the second class, we talked about karma and how it functions. And if you missed either of these classes, they are available on YouTube, and I hope that you'll go back and watch them because I have a lot of stuff I want to cover in these classes, so I probably won't repeat myself. But the classes are intended to build on each other. So I'm kind of assuming that you may have heard stuff from the past classes. So in this class today, we're going to continue talking about karma and talk about how karma manifests as the 6 realms. Thank you. So today we'll continue talking about karma and about how karma manifests as the 6 realms of cyclic existence. So what is cyclic existence, or samsara? Samsara is the wheel or round of existence. It means going around and around from one place to another in a circle, like the wheel of a water mill, just spinning around and around and around. We go around and around this wheel, taking rebirth in one after another of the 6 realms as a result of our own actions, which, whether the actions are positive or negative, they're tainted by clinging and attachment. And so they keep us trapped in samsara. If you imagine a fly trapped in a closed jar, no matter where the fly buzzes around in the jar, it can't get out. And similarly, whether we're born in the higher realms or the lower realms, we're never outside of samsara. We're just a fly buzzing around the jar. In the upper part of the jar are the higher realms of the gods and humans, and in the lower part are the 3 unfortunate realms. Within this jar of samsara, there's nothing but suffering. And countless beings, most beings, suffer far more than we do, and far more than we can even imagine. The lower realms experience a ceaseless round of sufferings, just one on top of another. The heat and cold of the hell realms, the thirst and hunger of the hungry ghost realms, the mental darkness and stupidity and fear of the animal realm. And the very least of the suffering in the lower realms is 1,000 times worse than the most severe suffering of the human realm. And the suffering of the lower realms is so excruciating, we can't even imagine it. And it lasts for an unfathomably long time. And there's no escape from this suffering. When in the lower realms, there's no escape from this suffering, even by death, for aeons. You might die over and over again within the same realm, and you're not released from it. The beings in these realms are unable to engage in spiritual practice because their suffering is too intense. So there's no way they can help themselves. They're stuck there, just completely consumed by their suffering. And they can't think of anything else. They can't even, think of saying like, "Oh, Mani Padme Hum" or something. It's just all they're doing is just being in agony. And in the higher realms include the human realm, the jealous gods realm, and the long-lived gods realm. And human beings have many types of sufferings, but primarily we suffer from birth, old age, sickness, and death. Those are the things that none of us will ever get out of. You can get out of old age if you die early. Otherwise, you get all of them. And there's really I've never met anyone that has never been sick, never met anyone that's never been born, And then the jealous gods suffer from constant fighting and jealousy, and the long-lived gods are intoxicated with pleasure. And the pleasure sounds nice, but it gives them this false sense of contentment that makes them lazy. And so they don't use this like long, cushy life of theirs to practice the Dharma and do something to better their situation. They just use up all of the good fortune they have. And then when their long life ends, they fall again into the lower realms, having basically emptied their bank account of that good karma. And Chagda Tuku Rinpoche says, these realms cannot be located in space or proven to be true. Except for the human and animal realms, we cannot perceive them. Yet neither can we deny their existence, because to the beings who suffer, the experience is very real, just as the appearances of a nighttime dream seem real to us. Our dreams may unfold as nightmarish experiences of violence, but as soon as we wake up, we realize that nothing actually happened. They didn't ultimately exist, yet we cannot deny their vivid display. Nobody deliberately designed these torturous scenarios to make us suffer. They arose as projections of our mind, manifestations of anger. The hell realm specifically. If anger repeatedly fills the mind, it will eventually permeate our reality, and sooner or later, we will experience what we call hell. In the same way, all the realms of samsara are manifestations of the mind's poisons and positive qualities. So as we talked about in our last class, the karma of any action really depends on our motivation, on what's going on in our mind. Why are we doing that action? It's too simplistic to think of karma as like good actions bring good results and bad actions bring bad results. It tends to be how we think of it. But it's too simplistic, and karma is very complex. It's difficult to judge whether an action or a situation is good or bad because of this fact that it just depends on what the person's motivation was. And we usually don't know what people's motivations were. We barely even know what our own motivations are in any given moment. And we usually are fooling ourselves. So, and there's no fooling yourself, if you think, oh, I'm really doing this because I care, but like secretly you've got some self-serving motivation. Like it doesn't matter if you're like, you can tell all your friends, no, I meant to do this out of the goodness of my heart. It doesn't matter. The karma is going to be for whatever actually happened in your mind. And so the karmic consequences of any action will vary person to person. There was once a man who created satsas, which are small figurines made out of clay that symbolize the enlightened mind. And one day, this guy carefully placed the satsa by the side of a road to bless the people passing by, the passing pedestrians, and he left. And then another man came along, and he saw that rain was hitting the satsa, and he thought, how sad, the satsa is going to get ruined. And so he looked for something to shelter it with, and the only thing he could find was the discarded sole of a shoe. So he made a little, tent for the satsa and put the sole of the shoe on top of the satsa to protect it from the rain. And then a third man came by, and he saw the sole of the shoe on top of the satsa, and he thought, this is terrible. Someone disrespected the three jewels by like placing a shoe on top of the satsa, and he removed the shoe. But all of these men had virtuous intentions in what they did. So even though the outer form of their actions was contrary, they all generated positive merit, which contributed to their eventual realization of enlightened mind. Or there's another story of the young monk who protected a deer running away from a hunter. When the hunter asked the monk if he had seen the deer, the monk nodded yes. And then when the hunter asked the monk to show him where the deer went, the monk pointed in the wrong direction. And even though the monk had taken vows not to lie and to tell the truth, he understood that telling the truth in this instance would put the deer in harm's way. So it was more important to protect the deer from harm. So how can we be sure that we have the right motivation? So often when we think we have the right motivation, we're really thinking of ourselves. And like even this monk, he could have told the truth about the deer and then praised himself for being very virtuous and holding his vow that he didn't lie, And some people are like that. They're so black and white with thinking about things. You're like, I did it. I checked the box. I did the thing. And it's like, without thinking about the actual impact and the motivation of why would you hold that vow? Why would you do this? You know, what is the real purpose of what we're doing here? And the purpose of what we're doing on this path is to help others, not harm them, and tame our mind. That's it in a nutshell. So when we're applying the principles that we're supposed to uphold, we need to remember that that's really what we're doing. But if we don't know what our motivation is, how are we going to know what kind of trouble we're getting ourselves into? If we're not really sure, if we're fooling ourselves often about, why we do the things we do. And there's no fixed result for any karmic cause. How do we know what kind of trouble we're going to get into? So one thing too about like the results of an action, like a good action, begets a good result. It's not even clear what a good or bad result might be sometimes, because sometimes what looks good is really bad or it feels bad. Like for instance, you might think that like having a lot of money and being beautiful are good things. But then you look at the people who are rich and famous for being so beautiful and they don't look very happy. And all of their messy personal lives are spread over the tabloid pages because they've got beautiful faces and they're on TV. And so, or like, hearing about like the horrible childhoods of child stars, and just how traumatized so many of them are because they were beautiful, like 7 years old, and they got rich off of it, and now they're traumatized. Or like I saw whatever award show happened recently, like Kylie Jenner wore these like heels that I guess didn't stay on her feet very well, so her stylist had her like glue them to her feet. And then there's a video of her online after the show with her whole team trying to rip them off her feet, trying to pull them off their feet and get the glue off. And she's like screaming in pain as they try and get her shoes off her feet. So she's very beautiful and she's very rich, and that does not sound fun. So that's what she's getting for that, It's kind of like a form, there's a little bit of like a slavery aspect that happens there with like when you get rich and beautiful and go to these award shows, you kind of you have the honor of wearing whatever someone designs for you and you have to wear it. And they'll just like tape you into place and do whatever they got to do to make it work because you're a coat hanger for the night. And, so we can't really stereotype what is good and what is bad. So of the 6 realms, the most severe suffering of the 6 realms is that of the beings in the hell realms. The hell realms arise as a reflection of extreme anger and hatred and cruelty. And the bodies of the hell realm beings are as sensitive as our eyeballs. If you can imagine that, if you can imagine when you get like an eyelash stuck in your eye and how much that hurts and you have to get that out. If you can imagine your whole body being as sensitive as that. And the beings in the hell realm suffer from intense heat or cold and pain beyond anything we can imagine, like being chopped up into little pieces or crushed between boulders again and again and again as a result of harmful actions motivated by hatred. And their misery is just all-consuming. They can't think of anything else for a single moment. And this, the hell realms and all the 6 realms do literally exist, but they're also present and observable in our world. And if you have a hard time believing in the hell realms as a place, you could perhaps consider its existence in this realm. So if you think about places where people die every summer from heat or die every winter from cold, for them, that is the experience of the hot and cold realms, in the hot and cold hell realms. So how do we know if our motivation is leading us there? And what does that look like in our world? What does that manifestation of the hell realms looking like in our world? Dzongtse Khyentse Rinpoche says, if you were an angry, aggressive person in life, and your actions were motivated by anger, you will continue to be angry in your next life. An angry person is hard to please, so you probably won't like where you live. However clean and white, you always find a stain on your freshly laundered towels. A rose garden is only ever a patch of thorns, only ever a patch of thorny bushes. However soft your sofa, you can never sit comfortably. However glorious the weather, you're always too hot or too cold. In fact, wherever you are never at ease. You always find something to complain about, and you're particularly vulnerable to being burnt or mugged in the street or stabbed. And this is what Buddhists describe as a hell realm. So we can see each of these realms present in our world. We can see kind of the mind that creates them, kind of that tendency, because it's that tendency of mind that projects the world. So you can observe people who are like this, who have these tendencies, or maybe you have these tendencies, and then, and you can see how they experience the results of their actions in this life. So then we have the hungry ghost realm. And beings in the hungry ghost realm are tormented by hunger and thirst as a result of harmful actions motivated by desire. And centuries can pass without them even hearing the word water. They're obsessed with finding food or drink, and they search for them endlessly, but they never find any. Sometimes they see a cool stream in the distance, but by the time they get there, it's very difficult for them to move their bodies. And they drag themselves painfully across the land to get to the creek. And then by the time they get there, the water's all dried up. Or they see an orchard of fruit trees in the distance, but by the time they get there, the trees are withered and dead. Or they see a bountiful feast, but when they get there, it's guarded by armed men that chase them away and attack them with weapons. So this realm is here too. I'm seeing videos on Instagram of that exact situation happening across the world right now, where there are people starving and unable to access the food that's available because it's being guarded with weapons, and they're shot at when they try to get any food. So we can see this right here in our world. I mean, the description of this is so much like what's happening in Gaza right now. And you see children who have limbs missing, and it's so difficult for them to move their body, just like this says. And by the time they get to the food's all gone. Or, people lining up for food and being shot at as, scrambling for children just trying to get like whatever little pinch of flour they can get from the bed of a truck. So we see this here. People may die from famine or starvation. They don't have enough clothes to cover their bodies. And this is the result of intense desire. Certainly all of our minds are filled with desire all the time, wanting something, needing this, wanting this, wanting this, wanting this. And we're never satisfied. It's like drinking salt water. Acting our desires is like drinking salt water. And so the more and more you drink, the thirstier and thirstier you get. Dzongtse Khyentse Rinpoche says, this quote's from his book, Living is Dying. And he just has such amazing descriptions of these states of mind. So I just want to read them verbatim because I think they're just so incredibly worded. He says, greedy misers, motivated solely by stinginess and avarice, take their penny-pinching habits with them into their next life. Misers are not only miserly with others, but also with themselves. You may own a great deal, 3 cars, 2 houses, cupboards full of kitchen appliances, jewelry, and so on, but you don't use any of it yourself, or even consider sharing it with those who have nothing. If you ever did splurge on an expensive jacket, you would probably die before you removed the price tag. You're far too stingy to eat in good restaurants yourself, so it never occurs to you to buy dinner for someone who is hungry. However much you have, it is never enough. When you die, you will be tortured by the knowledge that your good-for-nothing layabout relatives are thoughtlessly frittering away your painstakingly accumulated fortune. This is how Buddhists describe those who dwell in the hungry ghost realm. He just says it's so amazing. I can't paraphrase that. It's better to hear him. So then we have the animal realm. And beings in the animal realm suffer primarily from predation and domestication and from not having the ability to transform the conditions that produce their suffering. Their every waking thought is about survival. Wild animals are always hunting or being hunted, and domesticated animals like dairy cows and pigs suffer from slavery. Oysters are killed for their pearls, elephants are killed for their tusks, foxes for their fur, bears are caged and tortured for their bile. As a result of harmful actions motivated by ignorance, they're consumed by the daily tasks of simply surviving, and they don't have the wisdom to discern what's right and what's wrong. Even some animals seem really smart, like elephants and parrots, and even them still, they don't have the ability to practice the Dharma. They don't know. They can maybe mimic our language, or they have their own. Elephants can communicate with each other, and they have their own language and, the culture, rituals, funeral rites, but they don't have this ability to discern what's right from wrong and practice the Dharma. This realm is also inside of us. We all want to be happy, but we don't know how to accumulate the causes of happiness. And in trying to be happy, we unwittingly sow seeds of suffering because we really don't have a clue what's going on. And we misunderstand the nature of reality, and we forget about karma. We forget about cause and effect. So when we wander around in a state of delusion, committing actions that are contrary to our wish for happiness, then we're acting like ignorant animals. And Dzogchen Khyentse Rinpoche says, some people are fundamentally ignorant of what is going on around them and may even deliberately decide not to notice the sufferings of others. If you are this kind of person, you do your best to avoid feeling sympathy for anyone, actively encourage stupidity, ignorance, and a lack of empathy in others, and take pride in being entirely unmoved by the suffering of a turtle or a lobster as it's plunged into boiling water for your lunch. You educate yourself to form a thick skin and feel nothing for anyone, and then socialize with people just like you. You celebrate your hard-heartedness and teach your children and friends to be as callous and cold as you are. Even if you own millions, you are unable to bring yourself to toss a penny to a ragged street urchin who has no hope of an education or of even seeing a toy, let alone playing with one. When this kind of person is reborn, it will be as a far more powerful being's juicy snack. You will no longer have a home or even a postal address, never mind a bank account. If in your previous life you were a hunter, in your next life, you will be the hunted. Whenever you are lucky enough to find a handful of food, you will be paranoid about protecting it and live in fear of it being snatched away from you. Buddhists describe this realm as the animal realm. So hearing the way that he describes these realms, it's like, I feel like it's so easy to see those qualities in ourselves and think of specific people maybe that you're like, ooh, that person is a really good example of that mindset, And it's so normalized. A lot of this behavior, a lot of this way of being is so normalized, and we don't think about what kind of repercussions this very normal way of thinking and normal way of acting, like what that actually leads to. So then the next realm is the jealous God realm. The jealous God realm is a projection of extreme competitiveness and covetousness and continuous warfare. Birth in this realm results from virtuous actions motivated by rivalry or jealousy, like when you help others to prove your moral superiority. The lives of the demigods are characterized by envy. So even though they enjoy so much abundance, they argue constantly over territory and land. And they spend all their time wanting what others have and fighting over it. And worse, they can see the long-lived God's realm above them. And all of those God's needs are provided for by this wish-fulfilling tree whose roots grow in the jealous God's realm. So my little fruit tree is giving, you're taking all my fruit, you know? That fruit tree starts in my yard, but you're getting all the fruit? That's not fair. So then they see that and they become filled with resentment. They try to battle the gods. But the gods are more powerful and much more difficult to kill. So the jealous gods lose. They're bound to lose because it's an unbalanced battlefield. So they spend all their time fighting and they have no freedom from suffering. And then again, I think of places in the world that are like that too. And you have people people who are always up against an oppressor that's bigger than them, who gets the fruits of everything that comes from their land. They don't get any of the fruits of their own land. And it all goes to someone else who's so much more powerful than them. You fight against them and you fight against them and you fight against them, and you're always outnumbered, you're always outgunned. So we can see this realm here too. Dzongtsar Khyentse Rinpoche says, if you are jealous and act on your jealousy in this life, you will also be jealous in your next life. You will be reborn into a world where someone else always has what you long for: the look, the handbag, the shoes, the property, the partner. Even if you have it all, you get worked up about other people having more than you, and peeved if what they have is more expensive or more sought after. Jealousy and habitual overthinking fuel your paranoia to such a degree that you are never able to relax. Your envious mind always finds fault in those who are glorious, successful, famous, respected, and venerated. You constantly practice self-deception. You convince yourself that your jealous criticism is actually objective analysis, free from emotional entanglement, whereas in reality, this kind of critical thinking makes it impossible for you to rejoice at another person's joy or share in their happiness. Instead, your mind is consumed by thoughts about cutting the person you are jealous of down to size. Buddhists call this the Asura realm. Jealous gods are also called the Asuras. So the next realm is the long-lived God's realm. The cause of being born as a long-lived God is committing positive actions tainted by attachment instead of with bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is the union of wisdom and compassion, and without it, our actions remain ordinary and they reap an ordinary result within samsara. When we have bodhicitta, those actions help us open a doorway out of samsara. That's what actually gets us out. Can kind of dissolve the jar. So the gods enjoy an extremely long life of immense pleasure and power. They have everything they could possibly wish for. And it sounds great, but it's not, because they're so consumed by their own pleasure. They think of nothing else. All they think of is just their opulence and wealth and the next enjoyment. And so they don't have the freedom to engage in spiritual practice. It makes them very lazy, and they don't have any motivation. If you have everything you need, why would you pray for anything to be different than it is? Like, why would you possibly want to change that situation? It's great. So they don't use any of that freedom from suffering that they have, a temporary, peaceful existence. They don't use it. And then at the end of their lives, their bodies decay and smell. And so after that, they've used up all of that God realm karma, and then their bodies start decaying and they smell, and their friends abandon them. The gods wear these like flower garlands, and as they get old, and then the flowers all start to like wilt, and like everything, their food starts to spoil. Everything that was great, suddenly it all becomes impermanent and starts falling apart and getting gross. So then all their friends leave them, and they're like, ugh, don't remind us of that. And like, we want to go back to the party. And so they become a total bummer, and everyone leaves them. in their worst moment of their life. And then they can clearly see that their next rebirth will be in the hell realm because they've used up all their good karma. And then they feel intense regret for having wasted their life on these sensual pursuits instead of on spiritual pursuits. And this realm is also inside of us and can be seen in the experience of old age. Dzongtse Khyentse Rinpoche says, if you are proud and your life is motivated by pride, you will also be proud in your next life. Proud people are always convinced that they inhabit the moral high ground. They are born into a world where everyone suffers the same classic mix of inferiority and superiority complexes. It is a very parochial world. Everyone is small-minded, provincial, insular, narrow, small town, inward-looking, limited, restricted, conservative, conventional, short-sighted, petty, blinkered, myopic, introverted, illiberal, and intolerant. If you were born into this realm, no one will like you and you won't fit in, but you will be proud to be a member of a free society. Convinced that your view is the most objective and the most democratic, you won't hesitate to criticize others for having a different point of view or an alternative set of values. Unable to tolerate any form of dissent, you impose your values and ways of life on those who, in your judgment, are primitive, inadequate, or evil, merely because they disagree with you. And by trying to force them to do as you do, you make them suffer. This is what Buddhists call the God realm. Yeah. Again, lots of vivid examples coming to mind. Yeah. So the last of the 6 realms is the human realm. Human beings suffer from birth, old age, sickness, and death. We also suffer when we don't get what we want, whether it's food or clothing or wealth or influence. When we get something we don't want, such as criticism or physical illness or unpleasant circumstances. When we can't be with the people that we love, when we have to be with people we dislike. And in our fruitless, self-centered attempts to find happiness and avoid suffering, most human beings commit predominantly negative actions, which only causes us more suffering and more confusion. So there's a mixture of poisons that produce rebirth in the human realm, and the most prominent of these is desire. Dzongtse Khyentse Rinpoche says, if your current life is motivated by passion, You will also be passionate in your next life, always busy and always up to something. As a human being, you suffer from poverty mentality, constant uncertainty, and of course, birth, old age, sickness, and death. You are surrounded by people and things you desire, but never get what you really want. You always end up being separated from your loved ones because you spend all your time trying to make the money you think you will need for a future that never comes. It hits home, huh? Yeah. But of the 6 realms, the human realm is the best realm to be born into because it's our best bet for getting out of here. So it's the easiest place that we can be in order to practice the Dharma and free ourselves from samsara. The human realm is like the Goldilocks realm. So unlike the gods' realms, where they have so much pleasure and abundance, unlike the God realms, we have enough suffering to motivate us to look for a way out. Think about how popular the self-help industry is. Like, people are always looking for a way out of this. How do we stop this? How do we make this better? Like, constantly, we're all looking for some way to ameliorate this. And then unlike the lower realms, our suffering is not so all-consuming that it, prevents us from thinking of anything else. We do have enough. We might suffer a lot, but we still have enough mental space to, to learn about the Dharma, to start practice mindfulness of our actions and make better decisions. Like, we have enough space in our minds to do that and improve our situation. And by the way, although Buddhism typically describes samsara as having 6 realms, that's actually a generalization, and it's just easier to split them up that way. But samsara is made up of countless realms, and most of these realms we can't even begin to imagine. Hello, welcome. Like, even within the hell realms, there's like 18 hell realms, and that's just the ones that are in the list, because there's other realms. There's the ephemeral hells, and there's the, it's like there's lists within lists, and then other realms that didn't even make the list. And so there's so many experiences that beings have, most of which are just unimaginably terrible and awful. So when you think about these beings who are imprisoned by their own karmic consequences, remember that they've been your mother and father time and time again. We've all lived so many countless lives. You can't even count the number of times that they've been your own loving parents, and the kindness they showed you then was inexpressible. It's, I think sometimes, you might think like, well, okay, but if I was all these other beings, like if I was like a snail or like a lobster or something in past, like how caring was my mother really? Like, how caring are snail moms, And and you wonder about that. The care they showed you is inexpressible. Are you sure? Like, how, like the turtles just leave their eggs on the beach and peace out, But they really put so much effort. The mother turtles, they put so much effort into finding the exact right spot to lay their eggs, and they risk their lives to do it, to bring their little babies into the world. And like, I saw this video the other day of what was it? I think it was like an eagle or something like that, and some like, it's one of those like trail cam things that's like on like a mountain monitoring like an eagle's nest. And there was a snowstorm, and like a crazy snowstorm, and watching this eagle stay on top of her eggs and keep them warm in this snowstorm, it was incredible. I mean, welcome, you can come in. It was just, she was just fighting against these like 60-mile-an-hour winds, just like knuckle down, just like bare knuckling, holding on, and doing that to keep her eggs safe. And there's another video like that, some other kind of bird, and it was a windstorm, and the bird was literally like the wind would knock it over, would somersault off the nest, and it would come back and like get on the nest and hunker down, and then it would somersault off the nest in the strong wind and try again. So even these little animals and these other lives we've been in, our parents really did care for us in their way. They cared for us. And really tried to keep us safe, at the very least, keep us safe and keep us alive. And if you've been a parent, you know it's very difficult to keep your kids alive sometimes. So when we remember all beings as having been our parents and consider the suffering that they experience, we feel great compassion and we want to do everything we can to help them. And since we're beginners at this, we can't offer them much practical help right now to get them out of samsara and end their suffering. But what we can do is we can train our mind, we can develop our compassion, and we can commit ourselves to perfecting the disciplines of the Bodhisattva path so that one day we can lead all of our mothers and fathers out of suffering. You guys came right in time for the meditation. So as I mentioned in the past classes, the Tonglen meditation instructions that I'm using in this series come from a book called The Heart of Compassion, a commentary by Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche on one of the most revered texts of Tibetan Buddhism, the 37 verses on the practice of a bodhisattva, which was composed in the 14th century by Gyaltse Ngolchu Togme. And a little story about Gyaltse Ngolchu Togme. When he was at the end of his life, someone asked him which Buddha field he would go to in his next life. And he said, "I'll happily go to a hell realm if that means I can help beings. And I don't want to go to any Buddha field at all if I cannot help others there. But I have no power to choose where to go, so I simply pray wholeheartedly to the three jewels to be reborn as someone who can benefit others. That is the only wish I have." And similarly, similar story. There was also a bodhisattva called Longri Tangpa, an emanation of Buddha Amitabha, who constantly meditated on this practice of exchanging self with others. And he prayed many times to be reborn in hell when he died, in order to help all of the beings there who were undergoing such intense suffering. But his prayer was not fulfilled. And as his life came to an end, visions arose in his mind of Dewa Chen, Amitabha's Buddha field of bliss. And he knew that he was going to be reborn there instead. So immediately he prayed to be able to take as many beings with him as possible. And his wish was so strong that a vast number of beings poured after him into the Buddha field. And Jetsama has mentioned before that His Holiness Pena Rinpoche, when in his time off between reincarnations in our world, the time after his incarnation has left our world and we're waiting for his return, that he tends to go to the hell realms and liberate beings there while he's between lives here. So I know a lot of us feel like we're overdue for a vacation. Maybe consider using your vacation time to go to the hell realms and liberate beings like His Holiness Pena Rinpoche. Since his whole life dealing with wingnuts like us, and then it's like at the end, he doesn't even take a break. There's no beach trip or anything. He doesn't spend that time between lives or anything else. He just goes straight to the hell realms. Bodhisattvas don't take breaks. So in this class series, as I said, the majority of the meditation practice that we'll be doing each week will be the same. We'll meditate on bodhicitta and do a classic Tonglen practice. Say classic because it's the one that I think is, it's a version that is more commonly taught. And then we'll try a different Tonglen visualization at the end. And today, the twist on our Tonglen practice is that we'll be visualizing infinite forms of ourselves going to the hells and throughout the 6 realms to help all beings. So, the Tonglen practice is a very simple practice of exchanging the suffering of others with our own happiness. We take on the suffering of others and we send them our happiness. It's a practice you can do pretty much any time. And you can do it in very short periods of time. You can do it very briefly. You can kind of just flash on bodhicitta and then start doing Tonglen and doing the breathing visualization of Tonglen for, you could just do it for a minute and then stop and dedicate. You can do it very quickly anytime. But there are some extraordinary pith instructions that explain in more detail how to make the practice more effective. So we'll be doing kind of the longer version of Tonglen, doing the extended director's cut version. So first it's important, actually first I'll say, so let's get in meditation posture if you're not already. You can do this practice really anywhere. You don't have to be on a meditation cushion, but generally when we meditate, you can sit on a cushion or in a chair, but generally it's best to have a straight back and a relaxed body. That's it. And first, it's important to start by arousing a deeply felt warmth, sensitivity, and compassion for all beings. To do so, begin by thinking about someone who's been very kind and loving to you. In most cases, this could be your own mother, but it could be anyone who's been kind and loving to you. And reflect on their kindness. If you're thinking of your mother, perhaps you think of how she gave you life, how she suffered the discomforts of pregnancy and a distended body and the pain of childbirth, how she looked after you as you grew up, keeping you safe, keeping you clothed, keeping you fed, sparing no effort. She was ready to make any sacrifice for you and to put your welfare before her own. So just reflect on this person's kindness. When you feel strong love and compassion, imagine step by step that she is undergoing the sufferings of the six realms. In the hell realm, she is repeatedly and brutally killed and revived. She's tossed into a boiling cauldron of molten bronze. She suffers in agony before your very eyes. Then imagine that she's been reborn as a starving spirit, just skin and bones. She hasn't even caught sight of food for 12 years. She stretches her hands out to you, imploring you, "My child, do you have anything you can give me to eat?" Then imagine her reborn as an animal, a terrified doe being chased by hunters and their dogs. In panic, she leaps off a high cliff to escape them, but falls with unbearable pain, shattering all of her bones. Still alive, but unable to move, she is finished off by the hunter's knives. Continue to imagine her undergoing, in quick succession, situation after situation of suffering. As you imagine this, an intense feeling of compassion will irresistibly well up in your mind. At that moment, turn that intense compassion to all beings, realizing that each one of them must surely have been your mother many times and deserves the same love and compassion as your mother of this present life. And it's important to include all of those whom you now consider enemies or troublemakers. Reflect deeply about everything that all these beings are going through as they wander endlessly in samsara's vicious cycle of suffering. Think about old, infirm people, unable to care for themselves, about all of those who are sick and in pain, people who are desperate and impoverished, lacking even the most basic necessities, about people suffering famine and starvation, the pangs of hunger and thirst, those who are physically blind, and about those who are spiritually destitute, starved of the nourishment of Dharma, and blind to any authentic vision of truth. Think about all those who suffer as slaves to their own minds, constantly maddened by desire and aggression, and about those who harm one another without respite. Visualize all these sentient beings as a crowd in front of you, and let all the different forms that their suffering takes arise vividly in your mind. With an intense feeling of compassion, begin the practice of sending and receiving. Start by focusing on your most hated enemy or someone who's caused much trouble and difficulty for you. Take a moment to bring that person to mind. Consider that as your breath goes out, all your happiness, all your vitality, merit, good fortune, health, and enjoyment is carried out to him on your breath in the form of cool, soothing, luminous white nectar. Make, make the prayer. May this truly go to my enemy and be entirely given to him. Visualize that he absorbs this white nectar, which provides him with everything that he needs. If his life was to be short, imagine that now it's prolonged. If he needs money, imagine that now he is wealthy. If he's sick, imagine that he's cured. And if he's unhappy, imagine him so full of joy that he feels like singing and dancing. As you breathe in, consider that you take into yourself, in the form of a dark mass, all of the sickness, obscurations, and mental poisons your enemy may have had, and that he's thereby completely relieved of all his afflictions. Think that his sufferings come to you as easily as mountain mist wafted away by the wind. As you take his suffering into you, you feel great joy and bliss mingled with the experience of emptiness. Now do the same for the infinity of beings you are visualizing before you. Send them all of your happiness and take on their suffering. And repeat this again and again. Now, visualize that your body multiplies into infinite forms of yourself, which go to the hells and throughout the 6 realms of samsara, immediately taking on all the sufferings of each and every being they encounter and giving away all your happiness to them. Hi. Thank you for coming. So, as I mentioned, you can use this practice anytime. You just start with bodhicitta. Just remember bodhicitta. And then you can start doing one of the sending and receiving visualizations. And then at the end, we always dedicate the merit of our practice. We give all of our merit away to all beings. So we always dedicate the merit at the end. So I know we are right at the end of our class time. So should do the Chenrezig practice. Let me do the, you got to put this in the chat for those online real quick. 1 second. So this Chenrezig practice is also a practice of compassion. And Chenrezig here in this image has many, many hands and eyes, and that is so that he can help all of the many bajillion beings that exist in their multitude. He's got hands, eyes to see all of their suffering, hands to help them all.
So we'll begin.
Do you all have copies of the practice?
Yatsen chogi ngodrupne Pema jone jesura Kordu kandro mampo por Keki jesu dak druki Jinji lo chir sheksu so Guru Pema City Pema City Home.
Visualization will read in English. Your thousand
Thousand arms of the thousand universal monarchs, your thousand eyes, the thousand Buddhas of this fortunate age, you who teach each and every one of us according to our needs, Lord Avalokiteshvara, to you I pay homage.
And our mantra is Om Mani Padme Hum Kri. We'll take a few moments and repeat this mantra. Om Mani
Padme Hum Kri, Om Mani Padme Hum Kri, Om Mani Padme Hum Kri, Om Mani Padme Hum Kri, Om Mani Padme Hum Kri.
Om Mani Padme Hum Kri. Om Mani Padme Hum Kri. And then the last, the backside is the dedication. By this
virtue, may I swiftly accomplish the state of Chenrezig, and may all sentient beings without exception be placed in that very state. By this effort, may all sentient beings be free of suffering. May their minds be filled with the nectar of virtue. In this way, may all causes resulting in suffering be extinguished, and only the light of compassion shine throughout all realms. Well, thank you all for being here, and thank you to those online.